Welcome, time for some art fun. Today, it's a really exciting challenge where we see how much art I can make in 10 hours and whether I can finish this sketchbook. Finally, so stick around. I started this Etcher Lab Everyday Sketchbook on March 11th, 2022 with this little test page. And I've really been wanting to finish it lately. It's a little too big for me and it's just been going really slow. Usually I finish sketchbooks a lot faster than this. I currently have 9 pages left and I got an email last month from Miranda Watson at Alkali Creek Art asking if I wanted to do a 10-hour painting challenge to see if I could fill a sketchbook, or at the very least how much of a sketchbook I could fill. And so I jumped on it. I'm using this Ankapura sketchbook washi tape I got off of her site. She's actually currently having a 2-for-1 sale on this particular washi tape, so I thought I'd show it to you since you'll see it a lot in this challenge. It's the only one I'm using for this whole 10 hours. So I jumped on the challenge. There are a bunch of other art tubers doing this challenge and we're all releasing our videos on the same day. And so I'm going to link all of the videos, the playlist down below. I'm also going to do probably a pinned comment with that. And I'm just going to be flashing the names of the other participants up on the screen as you're watching. And of course, all of their names and links to their pages are also going to be below if you want to see how they fared with this challenge. But one thing I noted when I did this challenge, I'm going to try to lay out for you my challenges within the challenge, what I struggled with, and also what I found wonderful about this challenge. The challenges first, or the struggles first, because I know that's what I watch these types of videos for, is like, oh my gosh, how did you do this? What were the struggles? The first struggle I had, you can kind of see on this spread right here, which was I felt guilty about using these entire giant A4 pages in this very expensive Etcher Lab sketchbook for just one painting per side. I felt like I was wasting paper if I just did one big painting. And so when I first started, you're seeing that right here, which is I did 2 little bunnies next to each other on a single page. I split the page in half. After I was done with that, I thought to myself, if I keep doing this, keep splitting every page in 2, I'm never finishing this sketchbook even in 10 hours. So this is the last time you're going to see me splitting the page. I basically got to push through this long-standing struggle that I have where I feel like I'm quote unquote wasting art supplies based on this challenge. This challenge pushed me right past that struggle that I've had for a really long time, and I know a lot of us share, where we feel like we're wasting our art supplies just by using them. And I've always thought that was silly when I tell other people like, no, that's what they're there for, use them, but I still feel that way myself. So if you've ever felt that way, leave me a comment below letting me know which art supplies you struggle the most with using, and if whether or not you're afraid of using them up or you're just afraid that using them is literally wasting them. So this was my first spread, 2 little bunnies with a gray background. I used a mix of my Regina's watercolors, which I'm actually also on a challenge to try to use up. And so you'll see those Regina's watercolors a ton in this challenge because I thought it went really well together that I could be trying to use that up while also trying to finish this sketchbook. Because I was using the washi tape from Ankapura, the very first bunny I did had that little white outline to try to make it sort of look like a sticker, because that's something she often does. She'll paint with these really vibrant colors, which I didn't do, but she'll try to leave a little white outline sometimes around her animals to make it look like a sticker. So I wanted to try that with one of them. I loved how the bunnies came out. The next struggle that I had was wanting to not just sit there for as long as I was having to sit there. To do these, hours and hours long sessions to try to meet the 10 hours. And none of us in the challenge were required to do 10 hours straight. We didn't have to just sit there for 10 hours and like do all the filming in one day. A lot of us broke it up into several hour sessions, like 2 or 3 several hour sessions, and that's what I did. But even with just breaking it up into a few hours at a time, I was really struggling with just sitting there and painting without breaks. I work my painting process into my life. It's something that I do every single day, is make art. I don't necessarily paint every day, but I draw every single day. And I do it because it fits right in. I don't feel stressed about it. I don't feel pressure about it. I don't feel like I have to sit there for 10 hours and make a masterpiece. I make quick paintings. So for instance, each of those bunnies took about half an hour each. This baby owl, fudge ball, fluff ball was about half an hour. When I got into other types of paintings that aren't so in my wheelhouse as cute animals, which is obviously my thing, my jam, as you can tell from the name of my channel. When I go outside that comfort zone, it takes longer. The thing that took the longest were portraits, which are at the end. So I just really struggled with having to sit there. I wanted to mix it up. After each bunny, I wanted to get up and go to the gym or go on the bike or go for a walk with my dog or hang out with my husband or go for a meal with him. It was hard to sort of feel for the first time in the entire time that I've been making art like it was a job, like it was an assignment, as opposed to it's something super fun. Even if I'm doing a commission, it only feels like a job in the sense that the pressure to make sure it's good increases, but it's not a job in the sense that I have to sit there for 8 hours like you do for a normal desk job. So that was my other struggle, and that was definitely the biggest struggle because I got over the whole wanting to save paper pretty quickly, especially in light of the fact that the whole point of this challenge was to use up the paper. Like, can you imagine? I feel so silly saying it right now and even admitting, but that's literally what I was thinking. I do feel like a doofus, I will tell you that. So once I did 3 cute animals, and that little owlet, by the way, was mostly, I think it was almost all Regina's watercolors. I don't think I used any Turner gouache like I did for the background with the bunnies. I did Turner gouache for one, acrylic gouache for one of them, and I did a Posca pen for the other for the background. But this was just, the owl was just Regina's watercolors. Now this one is in Neocolor 2 fancy water-soluble crayons. One of the things I wanted to use this challenge for was to make sure I used a variety of materials, even though I wanted to focus on the Reginas whenever I was using watercolor. I did this one with Neocolor 2 and ink, black ink. I love painting with ink, which you'll see again later on. But I don't know why. I was planning on doing almost all baby animals because they do go so fast and they're so much fun for me. But I decided I wanted to do a mix of other things. And I had made a Pinterest board for this 10-hour challenge. And I had made a video, like a picture library in my own Google Photos, also from screenshots of royalty-free pictures from like Pixabay and Pexels. And I had done a ton of animals, but I also did a few of these like cottagecore houses and some landscapes and some portraits. And as I was getting into this, I just kept getting drawn to the baby animals and the cottagecore like houses. So that's what you're going to see a lot of. I love how that first mossy cottagecore house came out, especially because it's so outside of my comfort zone. But then once I was done with it, I was right back to my comfort zone with this adorable, adorable little baby tortoise. I love this baby. I saw a lot of pictures online with this similar look where a little baby turtle is, or tortoise, I actually don't know which is which. I'm not great with that. As much as I love animals, can you believe that I stink at like identifying them, calling koalas koala bears, even though they're marsupials, not knowing how to pronounce quokka or coatamundi until I painted them. Like seriously, I'm a mess. But I love this little, I'm gonna call it a turtle because I don't want to be too fancy. And I did see a lot of reference pictures in this kind of position and just kept getting drawn to it and decided I have to do a turtle. And I loved how this came out. This was the baby animal that took the longest to paint because I got so into the details. And for this one, I was actually using gouache, just normal like Winsor & Newton and Holbein water-soluble gouache, a little bit of ink, and a lot of gold foil pen at the end. I had a lot of fun with this. Oh, I think I also used a Posca pen, and I got in there with maybe a white gel pen. I had a lot of fun. This was definitely a multimedia baby, and I loved how this one came out. But this is a great example of one where I wouldn't normally use the whole page. I would have felt like with such a little animal, I shouldn't use the whole page for it. I should break it up into 2. And I'm so glad I didn't, because the context, the composition of the piece, because the little turtle is where it is, I liked it so much more. So I was starting to get in my groove. I was actually at this point into my positives, getting very excited about how well things were turning out. I, at this point, had loved every single piece. I loved both of those baby bunnies. I loved that little baby owl with that really cool, almost glowing green background. I loved the moss house, and I loved that turtle. So then I was getting into a quokka because I'm obsessed with them right now. They're this really adorable little rodent-y thing that always looks like it's smiling or laughing. It's basically my spirit animal. If I were an animal, I'd obviously be a quokka. That's what I now realize. So I don't even think I would need to turn into an animal because I already resemble a quokka with the way that I am. That's definitely my personality animal. So I was starting to feel like, holy smokes, I can't believe how much I'm liking these pieces. Something about having a 10-hour challenge where my focus was more on finishing the art, like finishing the sketchbook, doing enough art during the challenge that I'm actually like moving the whole time. I'm actually painting for the full 10 hours, or at least prepping the page, prepping the paint, like in the painting process for 10 hours straight, which is what I was doing. I was focusing more on that and less on, I hope this comes out cute. I hope this comes out well. I hope this looks good. Whereas normally that's what I'm thinking about when I'm painting, or just not thinking at all. If I'm lucky, I'm like zoning out and it's my favorite part of painting. And then you almost like wake up and there's a cute animal in front of you. That's awesome. And I love when that happens. And that happened a lot more during this process because it was more about, you're just doing this for an amount of time. You're not doing this for a result. And so this little baby quokka that I made with watercolor brush pens, I actually used my Ohuhus. I have some from Arteza. I have some from Hippie Crafter. They're all great. I just happened to use my Ohuhus. And I did an ink background with Colorverse Delaware and Monbato's Hat from Diamine. Those are just two inks that I like better to paint with than to write with. I don't like how they look in a pen. So I was back to my cottagecore vibes with this next one. And even though it's so out of my comfort zone to do this kind of like house painting in the woods type thing, I'm obsessed with this one. I don't know which is going to be your favorite. Obviously, the cute animals I think turned out the best, but I loved making this. I used my Grabby paint pens, which are like a Posca dupe that are just a little cheaper and a lot juicier. Like you have to be a little careful actually because they're so juicy. And I just had so much fun. I had a podcast on, the sun was shining, I was liking the colors I was using. I didn't make a move where I was like, oh, that stinks, I ruined it, which I don't know about you, but often I'll feel that way. And when I was done, I looked at it and I was just like, I want to live there. I want to be there. I want to visit this place. I need to. So I just loved this piece. I was really happy with it. By the end, I will hope that you'll leave me a comment with what your favorite piece was. That would be a wonderful thing to see what everyone's favorite was, in light of the fact that I will tell you, I did 15 pieces in the 10 hours. So spoiler alert, that's what you're going to be seeing is a total of 15 pieces in 10 hours. And I was really, really happy with them. So now that I say that out loud, it sounds like a ton. Like I definitely can't believe that I did that much art in 10 hours, but I did, and I really loved it. So what you're seeing here, by the way, is in the background, I'm using my super special, super granulating watercolor palette. It's my favorite palette that I own. It's not a palette that you could use every day. You can't do everything with it. Like I don't think I could do great portrait work with it or anything like that because you sometimes just need the clean colors that don't have any granulation to do some of that. But it's my favorite palette because it's the most exciting. Like every single color in there is special to me. And I think it did its magic with this background. Like that's what it's for. So I really loved being able to use a bunch of different materials. That was super fun. Like the fact that I got to use not just watercolor and different kinds of watercolor, but also Posca pens, Posca dupes, colored pencils, Neocolor 2s, which are one of my favorite materials to work with. I love them. They're so much fun. Ton of ink, acrylic gouache, regular gouache. I got to use so many things. My gold foil pen that I love that I was tipped off to by Mira Byler. She's one of my favorite art tubers. Very relaxing to watch and fun and super friendly. I was on a roll at this point, and this is my favorite animal that I painted. This little fuzzy owl, I don't know why it's everything, but it came out like the stinking cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. I cannot stop looking at how cute this baby is. Like I actually am interrupting my notes of what I'm supposed to be talking about to gush about how stinking cute this little baby owl came out. So she's precious and fuzzy and I want her and I wish I could just like will her into being and she could be my pet even though I'm totally allergic to feathers. I would make it work. I would get shots. I don't care. So she's adorable. This is also one where I went a little in on the paper and I felt like a little of that moment of like you're wasting the white by leaving so much white around the edges, but it's not wasted. I love that page. That's one of my favorite pages in this whole sketchbook now. So again, if I'm struggling that much with this like waste concept, I know Sketches and Scrubs, another one doing this challenge, my girl of all girls, love her so much. She also talks about how she saves and hoards her fancy special watercolors and her special materials and her special paper. And she had a wonderful fan of hers send in I think Holbein watercolors to her and maybe one other kind. and told her specifically, I'm only sending this to you so you use them. You will be hurting my feelings and wasting my gift if you don't use it. And that was like exactly what she needed to hear. And she ended up using it and messing around and making her loose florals that she's known for. And it's just a really cool thing to know. It's one of the things I love about ArtTube, how we all kind of share some of those same struggles. And so I try to remind myself not to be embarrassed and just say it. Like, that is definitely something I was thinking throughout this challenge. I can't tell you how often. So I did finish this sketchbook. We're not there yet, but in this challenge, I did finish the sketchbook. That baby fox was super fun to paint. I did come back. I only had one page left at this point. Well, 3 like sides, but 1 physical page, if you see what I mean. So I was getting super close. I was getting super excited. I had made that little baby owl. I had made that cottagecore A-frame. I was on a roll. I was having the time of my life. So I, at this point, was really just getting nervous about being able to film all of this and being able to compress everything so I would still have room, because I have very limited room the way that I film. I don't have one of these cameras with like a terabyte storage facility adjacent. I don't know how people do it. I literally film on my phone and always have. And so I had to take, in between the filming sessions, I would have to take breaks to upload everything to my editing software, compress it, strip all the sound so you weren't listening to like, copyright music that's going to get this thing struck from YouTube, and speed it up, download it, I don't know. And then I would have to do that again and again every time that I would do this. So the editing was going on as I was filming, and that's more what I was worried about at this point. I was still so excited that these were coming out the way they were. Like, I loved how this little cottagecore feel vibe came out. I loved the sky and the water. I think the reflection came out really good. I was feeling myself. I mean, you're probably able to tell. I know I sound so cocky, but I was actually in full shock after every piece. I was just like, why are these good? I usually don't just make great stuff constantly. If you've looked at any of my sketchbook tours, you know that I include all of my total garbage in there, because I want you to know that it's not like this. You don't just like create piece after piece that you really like. But this was just magic. I don't know what it was about this 10-hour challenge. It literally was like sprinkling magic dust over my sketchbook and my materials, and every single piece I made was good. Until the portraits. I do love the portraits, but I don't expect you to love the portraits. It's one of the reasons that I waited until the end to even dabble in portraits. But anyway, that past cottagecore piece was all watercolor. The fox was all watercolor. This bird, I'm doing the background in Turner acrylic wash, and then I did the bird in ink. And it was really fun. The bird, the reference picture was like the blue parts of this bird looked like they were glowing. And I decided to use the Edelstein Apatite ink, the Pelikan Edelstein Apatite ink that I got in a gift package from Stephanie Davis, who is another wonderful YouTuber here, ArtTuber, who I watch constantly. And she sent me some ink samples, and that ink sample was like the perfect thing. And this is what it looks like here. It is gorgeous. I also really love this ink in a pen. This is one that I'm getting a bottle of based on the samples that she sent me. But y'all, at this point, I only had one side left. When this bird is over, I only have the last page in the sketchbook to fill. And I could not believe that it took me from March of this year to August to get through 2/3 of the sketchbook, but less than 10 hours to finish the end of it. I mean, that was a wake-up call too, that I had clearly been avoiding this sketchbook because of how big it was, because of how intimidating it was, because of how expensive it was. So I don't think I'll be purchasing the A4 everyday sketchbook in the future. I do think I would get an A5 though, because I love the paper and I love the cover and I loved being able to paint it. But this challenge just showed me there's no way, if I was super comfortable with this sketchbook, it would have taken me that long to fill it, because this was my 23rd or 24th sketchbook that I filled, and it took me that long. It doesn't take me that long to fill sketchbooks. I'm using them every day, so they get filled pretty quickly usually. And that was a huge red flag to me, that it took that long to just get that far. And then it took almost no time to finish it once I just took the wheels off and took the safety belt off and decided to just go for it and not feel so guilty about every page I was filling. So that was something else that I took away from this challenge, was like really knowing, hey, these are the sketchbooks that I pull out and want to use over and over, and these are the ones that I avoid. The Strathmore 500 series is one that I love and will fill over and over, the 8x10 size. The Stillman and Burns sketchbooks, especially the Beta series and the Alpha series, are two that I really love as well. Neither of those are great with watercolor, and that was something to know because I clearly love watercolor. So it's just a matter of being comfortable that it's not going to look exactly like you want it to, the way it would on this paper. On the Etcher paper, because it loves watercolor and it's cotton paper, it's going to look the way you want it to look. If you're using layer after layer, if you need to use a ton of water, if you need to lift, whereas the Stillman and Burn sketchbooks don't really love that. They'll start to pill if you try to use a ton of water and try to lift and stuff. So that might sound like a bad thing, but what I learned from this challenge is I'd actually prefer a slightly crappier paper, pardon my language, but I'd prefer a slightly worse paper because it takes the pressure off in my sketchbook. I want really nice paper when I'm making standalone pieces, but when I'm making sketchbook work, I want paper that I can use watercolor on that won't just like disintegrate and fall apart, but I don't want it to be too fancy, and I certainly don't want it to be too expensive, or clearly I'm just not going to use it as much, which I don't want. I want to really use it all the time. So this was my last page. I made this little baby polar bear. I was really trying to go for a different color way. I thought that the what looks yellow here would look more orange because I was using the warm, almost like the New Gamboge warm color in Regina's, but it ended up just looking like yellow. So I ended up lifting a lot of the yellow off later. I don't know if that'll be the final picture that you see or not. At the end, I'm going to have pictures of all of the paintings so you can take your time and pause and look at each one. But this was the last page, and I was so excited to actually be done with this beautiful sketchbook. So proud of myself. This is just a quick review of all the paintings I did in this sketchbook, but my 10 hours weren't done when I finished. So I ended up going and getting out my next sketchbook. And the next one that I was going to use is this Stillman and Burn Zeta Series 8x10 mixed media sketchbook. And I had actually already put my own little sticker on there of a floof owl that I'd done in a prior video that you might have seen. And I get my stickers for my work off of Redbubble. So the link is in every video description if you ever want to check out my stickers. But it's 270 GSM, it's smooth surface white, it's supposed to be for mixed media, it's supposed to take water-based, you know, anything, any materials, any media that you want. So I wanted to do my similar, usual, somewhat test page, but I also wanted to do an actual painting on the first page. So I did write in the information since that little slip does get thrown away. So I like to write down the main information on there. I write down my start date, and then I got to testing. And you'll see that go by, the beautiful montage. I love swatching. I just love it. It's so relaxing. It's so pretty. These materials look so great. But as you can see, I did try to do a lot of water on here, and it does well. Like, as you can see, that's a lot of water. That's ink, that's watercolor with a lot of water. And it did well. But if I tried to lift that or do more layers on it, that's what I'm talking about. If I scrubbed it, then it would possibly start to pill. And that's what I learned later on in doing my watercolor portraits on the following pages. But I was so excited. The fact that I powered through and started a new sketchbook during this 10-hour challenge meant that I actually launched right past that first page jitters feeling and right into, I'm already on my third page in this sketchbook based on being in this challenge. It already feels like I'm into this sketchbook and I'm well on my way. So that was another huge benefit of this challenge, was pushing me through not only finishing one sketchbook, but launching me like past the start line of the next sketchbook. So that was really fun. During this challenge, there was this big email chain with the participants where people were like replying all with their struggles and their concerns. And it was really nice. I wish one person had suggested that we had done like a Discord for the challenge. And I wish we had, because it would have been so cool to hear what they were going through and what they were struggling with as I was going through those struggles too. And I'm just lucky. I don't want to jinx myself because I'm still recording the voiceover, and I don't want this to poop out at this point with all this work into it. But I'm just glad that my phone actually let me record all this footage. Everything, obviously, to make this video a half an hour, when I recorded 10 hours of painting, it was numerous times of uploading and speeding it up, speeding it up, speeding it up. So just know, like, half an hour was a pretty good rule for most of the animals if you want a realistic view of how long the animals took. Everything else was varied because it's outside of my comfort zone. I loved how this little baby squirrel came out, and I really love that first page with the mix of little tests of different materials, but also an actual painting to open up to. I really loved it. So now that we were almost done, and I knew only my like mega fans what Sketches and Scrubs calls her MVPs would still be with me after, almost 25 minutes into the video, that's when I got brave and decided to dive into portraits. My comfort zone when making portraits is to use ultramarine blue, yes, granulating ultramarine blue for shadows, and quinacridone rose for the pink parts of the face or for blending, and leaving the highlights either a very pale wash of one of those two colors, a mix of those two colors, or I will go in to warm everything up with Naples yellow, which is my favorite color for the lighter skin tones. So I just feel like it's already mixed. It's already fabulous. So I was doing this one and I actually, do you see what I mean? Like I love how this looks with the blue glow. I know this still looks kind of creepy and like a clown because the eyes aren't in and the hair isn't in yet, but I actually love this phase. And I love painting portraits like this. They're so relaxing. I don't love them in the same way I love the animals, because when I paint animals, or apparently cottagecore houses, that was a revelation during this challenge. When I paint those things, I'm making the view of reality as I want it to be, like animals as cute as they could possibly be, with either very flat backgrounds that let them stand out or with really glowing, flowy backgrounds. But when I make portraits, I just kind of follow the art. I don't know if this is going to make sense, but hear me out. I draw and I follow where I think things should go when I'm very focused on the particular pieces of the face or the body. I'm not looking at it as a whole as I paint. And so the whole ends up surprising me and going in a whole different direction. Like this was actually a Middle Eastern model, male model, and it ended up to me looking more like an Asian model. And that's because I didn't look at the whole as I was going. I just look at each little individual bit and go with what it's doing. Like I just use the model and the reference picture as a loose starting point to get proportions. And then I follow whatever's happening on the page and try to let it happen. I don't know if I'm not explaining this well, but hopefully you know what I'm talking about. I'm assuming the people who do art, you know what I'm talking about. Like it's almost like when you look up at the sky and you look at the clouds and you see what you see in the clouds and someone next to you might see something totally different. That's how it is when I'm painting. I'm just following what my eye is seeing on the page and what it's telling me wants to be there, as opposed to trying to look up and down and make it exactly and make it like a photo almost. That's not how I do portraits. So I actually loved how this came out. I thought it was super moody and interesting. I loved how the blues and pinks came out. So I decided to do one more portrait, and this time of a woman. And I'm going to go ahead and spoiler alert you here and let you know this is the last piece that I was able to finish in the 10 hours. And because I was at the end of the 10 hours and I had to stop, I didn't get to make the background the way I wanted it to. So just know in the future, if you ever do a sketchbook tour, you see this picture again, there's a hot pink background that I made with Opera Rose paint, watercolor paint, but it wasn't solid and bright enough for me. So I might go back in with Opera Rose Turner acrylic gouache, or just many more layers of this Opera Rose watercolor, but I didn't have time to finish the background. So just know that's how the 10 hours shook out, is I was done with the portrait, but not done with the background when the 10 hours ran. And I thought that was really great. Actually, I'm lucky that it didn't run out in the middle of the face or the hair or something. I actually didn't realize until the timer was off and everything was done how sad I would have been if that had happened. And I'm really excited to watch everyone else's videos. I know who's participating, but just so you know how this is working from our side, everyone is loading their videos up the day before it's going to go live on YouTube, so we can all see each other's videos, we can all link each other's videos in our descriptions. And so I won't know what their struggles were or what happened with them until I get those links, which I don't have as I'm sitting here recording this, obviously, because it has to be done recording for me to load it up, and we're all loading it up the same day. So I'm really interested to see what they all struggled with, what they made, if they had any misses. I mean, I would say this portrait is the closest to a miss, but the fact is I really love it. I just think maybe the nose isn't proportionate, isn't like sticking out far enough, but it actually works. Like it is a realistic nose. It's just not the nose I would have been picturing. And again, this is the portrait where the paper kind of showed me its limits, because I kept trying to lift and lift on the face and it ended up just looking muddy and grainy and like just bad when I tried to do that. So I had to kind of just let things go. Where normally I would keep going, I had to let certain things go. And I still love how this came out. But that far cheek, that's why that nose looks so weird. I was trying to lift and I was trying to make it bigger. I was trying to make it rounder. And the paper was just like, nope, nope, it's a no. It's a no from me. So I had to kind of just give up on that. I might paint this reference picture again because I really do love how this came out. And maybe you'll get annoyed with me for talking this way about this portrait, because I do think it came out really cool, especially because I don't do a ton of portrait work. It's one of the things I do least, but I really enjoy it when I do it. So I hope that you really enjoyed this video. I'm not quite done. You'll see I'm still got to do the hair in the background, but I wanted to just start talking to you about my thoughts on you picking up a challenge like this for yourself. I know you might not have a YouTube channel. In fact, it's very likely you don't have a YouTube channel, but I got so much out of this challenge just with the style that I developed with the cottagecore houses that I did not have before coming into this challenge because I didn't do enough of them before. It was like rare that I would ever do a house. I always liked doing them, but because I was stuck into, you need to find enough references to paint 15 or to 20 things, I didn't know how many things I would end up being able to paint. I learned that I developed that, and I really love it. And it's going to be a part of my practice now that I'm not intimidated to go pull a picture of a really cute cottagey looking, or like hygge, I guess is the word, right? Hyggua. I don't remember how to spell it, but that like fuzzy blanket feeling paintings that I'm going to be incorporating into my practice. And the fact that I can use big paper, I can use expensive supplies and not have to feel guilty, and maybe it'll come out great, maybe it won't. But also the idea of having your focus on something other than the product, just having this type of challenge. It doesn't have to be a 10-hour challenge. Like I understand that that's Looney Tunes. I think that you could do a 3-hour challenge or a 2-hour challenge, and that would be great because that would address both of the problems that I was talking about before, as far as getting you over your fear of using your supplies and the focus on the result as opposed to the time and the process, but also that need to like get up and move your legs and see your family and play with your dog and do your work and stuff. If it was just a 2-hour challenge, I think that it would get a lot of the benefit of this without the drawbacks. So I highly encourage you to consider doing that in your own day-to-day life. Take on a time-based challenge, whatever it is. And if you do, please post what you paint on Instagram so I can see it. I'm always really interested in what you all create, and I love to follow you back on Instagram and see what you're making. And I would love to see that. So you can use the hashtag that we created for this challenge, which of course is in the description and probably will be in the title of this video. Use that hashtag on Instagram if you want to show us what you're creating if you do a version of this challenge yourself. You can still use the 10-hour hashtag even if you're just doing a 2-hour or a 1-hour or a 5-hour. It doesn't matter. I just want to see what time-based challenge you're making and what you do with it. I was so excited to be invited to do this challenge by Miranda Watson. I was really happy to invite a couple of other people, or suggest to her that she invite a couple of other people, including Stephanie Davis, to do it with us. And I am so excited to see what everyone creates. So remember to check out all of their videos too. They would so appreciate the support, but also how interesting. Like, I just love these kinds of videos and see what people make. And I can't wait to see how different what they make might be from what I made. Like, I did literally no botanicals, no florals, no true landscapes. The only landscapes that peeped in were like behind cute houses. So I'm really excited to see what they create. If they did more portraits than me, totally different portraits than I did. And I hope that you're excited to see that too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you're subscribed to my channel. If you're not, please consider subscribing. If you have liked this video, which I'm assuming you did if you waited this long and you're still listening, please click like, and please leave me a comment with which your favorite piece was that I did. I'm going to be flashing through them right now to remind you. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember, create something cute.